Hello friends, welcome back to our channel. Today we will tell you the story of an elderly widow who sheltered 20 freezing motorcyclists in her garage. In the morning, more than 1,000 Hell's Angels stopped outside her door. The woman was very surprised by this, but she did not refuse to help people in trouble. Let's get started. An old woman named Helen lived alone in a small town. One day, a group of bikers asked her for help. They needed to hide from the cold. It was winter. The temperature dropped to 30 degrees. Suddenly, strong winds started blowing across the fields, and a snowstorm was coming soon. The wind was so strong that it almost knocked the bikers off their feet. They were freezing. One of them had a broken leg and could not continue the journey. That's when they met Helen. At first, the old woman refused to let the bikers into her house. She was afraid that they would rob her. But the leader of the group promised to be back in the morning if she let them spend the night in her garage. Then he took out a thick wad of bills and handed it to the old woman. "Here, take it," he said. "You will need it." However, Helen still didn't want to agree. At first, she wanted to call the police, but then she thought maybe these people are not that bad. So she took the money and agreed to let the motorcyclists spend the night in her garage. After that, the bikers left. Helen opened the garage door and saw 20 motorcyclists sitting there. They were all shivering. The old woman poured some water into small cups and gave them blankets. Although she was scared, she tried to do everything she could for the bikers. The guests spent the night in the garage. In the morning, they promised to return and they kept their word. When the sun rose, 1,000 bikers stood outside Helen's house. The woman couldn't believe her eyes. What did they want? Why did they come? Some bikers were carrying tools, others were holding wrenches. One of them approached the old woman and said, "We're here for your garage. We'll need to work with it." What? Helen was deeply surprised. It turned out that the bikers were part of a large club called Hell's Angels. And their leader, whose name was John, told Helen that their cars needed repairs. The bikers wanted to take part in a charity event, but bad weather and a broken car made it impossible. Moreover, one of the bikers broke his leg and he couldn't walk. When John and his friends met Helen, they decided to ask her for help. But the leader of the Hell's Angels never expected such a turn of events. The members of his club had been driving for a long time and they were tired of staying in hotels. No one wanted to rent a room for a whole week to them. But Helen's garage changed everything. The woman agreed to let them spend the night there. And in the morning, they brought her a huge sum of money. Moreover, the Hell's Angels offered to fix her garage and even the house. Helen was surprised. She didn't know what to say or how to thank the bikers. Then she invited them to have breakfast at least. The Hell's Angels gladly accepted the invitation. They sat down at the table and ate pancakes with syrup and eggs, drank coffee and tea, and of course they continued to give Helen money. She didn't need that much money though. The woman simply couldn't refuse it. The Hell's Angels stayed in the city for a few more days to take part in the charity event. Every morning they came to Helen's house and every evening they returned to her garage. When they weren't busy with the event, the bikers helped the old woman around the house. They fixed the roof, the porch, and even the fence. Moreover, the Hell's Angels went shopping and brought Helen a lot of food, saying that she didn't need to cook for them. However, the woman insisted that they sit down at the table. She baked apple pie, which the bikers really liked. In just a few days, Helen and the Hell's Angels became friends. They spent time together, talked about different topics, and laughed. It seemed that Helen was the happiest old woman in the world. At first, she was afraid of the bikers, but now she understood that they were good people. After the Hell's Angels finished their work in the city, they had to hit the road again. They said goodbye to Helen and gave her a big box. "Open it when you're alone," John said. That evening, after the bikers left, Helen opened the box. It contained 20 blankets, 20 pillows, and 20 sleeping bags. The Hell's Angels probably understood that the woman could sell these things and buy herself something she needed. But no, these things were definitely meant for the homeless people who spent the night on the streets. The next day, Helen took the box and went to the church. There was a shelter for the homeless people nearby. The woman wanted to give them the things the Hell's Angels had given her. However, when she opened the door, the priest stopped her. "Why don't you give these things to those who spend the night in the garage?" he asked. Helen realized that the leader of the Hell's Angels was right. He knew that she was a kind woman and would give the things to the homeless. But Helen's garage was also a shelter. For many years, she'd been letting homeless people spend the night in her garage, and she provided them with blankets and food. Those people were like family to her. When Helen entered the garage, the homeless people were shocked. They couldn't believe that the old woman had brought them new blankets and sleeping bags. Everyone thanked her, but she only smiled and waved them off. The next day, a stranger came to Helen's house. He introduced himself as John and said that he was the leader of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. "I wanted to ask you if you're okay," he said. "You seem to be a good woman. Is everything all right?" Helen was a little surprised by the visit, but she was glad to see John again. "Of course," she replied. "Everything's fine. Thank you for asking." Then John took out a thick wad of bills and handed it to Helen. "Take it," he said. "It's another donation from our club. We know that you spend a lot of money helping the homeless people, so please accept it." Helen was deeply moved by the Hells Angels' actions. She didn't need that much money, so she offered to buy food for the homeless people. "No, buy yourself something nice," John replied. "You deserve it." Then John took out a card from his pocket and handed it to Helen. "Call me if you need anything," he said. "And don't forget that you are the best woman in the world." Helen's eyes filled with tears. From that day on, Helen continued to help the homeless people. She visited them in the shelters and gave them food and clothes. Moreover, the old woman often invited the homeless people to her house. She shared her food with them and talked for hours. One day, Helen received a phone call. On the other end of the line was a stranger who introduced himself as John. "Hello, is this Mrs. Helen?" he asked. "Yes, it's me," the old woman replied. "Do you remember me? I was one of the homeless people you helped." "Oh, yes, of course," Helen said. "I wanted to thank you once again," the man continued. "You helped me get back on my feet when I had nowhere to go. You gave me food and clothes, and most importantly, you believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Now I have a job in my own apartment. I'm starting to think about the future. You probably don't remember me because I wasn't the same person then. And now I'm calling to tell you that I'll never forget what you did for me. I will always be grateful to you." Helen's heart melted when she heard these words. She felt that she had done the right thing by helping the homeless man. "You're welcome," she said. "You're a good person, John, and you will make something of yourself." "Thank you, Helen. I won't let you down," the man replied. "Goodbye." Years passed, but Helen continued to help the homeless people. She understood that every person needs help sometimes. And even the strongest and most successful people can find themselves in a difficult situation.